farm-managed natural regeneration, which is our main intervention in rainwater harvesting. We do this work mostly dry areas or semi-arid regions here in Tanzania. So my presentation will focus on the successes, approaches, and challenges. First, I'd like to give a brief introduction of our organization, Lead Foundation. Actually, LEAD is an acronym for Leadership, Environment, and Action for Development. It's a local NGO based and headquartered in Dodoma, Tanzania. Founded 12 years ago. And as Mr. Kinsey has just said, the founders of this organization are here today, Baba Skofu na Mama Chiwanga. Maybe later I'll give 1 minute to say hello to you. But so apart from founding the TIST, they also founded this organization, Lead Foundation. Here, vision and mission, I think you can read even on our website. But the most important thing is that as the name itself portrays the ethos of the foundation, which is leadership, leadership formation, environmental conservation, and community development. So our organization has 3 main thematic areas. The first one is leadership, the second one is environmental conservation and community development. But the way we work, we usually do all these 3 area of focus in an integrated approach. But for the past 12 years, we've been doing mostly environmental conservation projects, but of course we've been integrating other thematic areas, particularly the leadership and the community development. So what we do, we basically do landscape restoration, and for the past 12 years we've been implementing landscape restoration projects in dry areas, semi-arid woodlands, and we have 2 main interventions. As I mentioned before, the first one is natural regeneration, particularly the FMNR, farm-managed natural regeneration, which we call it High here in Tanzania, and also combines the assisted natural regeneration, which is commonly known, particularly in the lake zone regions, as Ngitiri. All those are natural regeneration, and we all most of them, we tell them as Kisiki High so that farmers can understand well. But also we use rainwater harvesting, and as you can see, all these techniques, or both of these techniques, are techniques which are more suitable in dry lands. And I've said our priority area of intervention is on dry lands. Maybe because our organization is based in Dodoma, which is also a dry land, so we decided that to give priority on other dry lands. But maybe also because most of the organizations do not prefer to work on dry lands, the semi-arid areas, because it's very difficult to achieve the targets, particularly if you're not using the right intervention. So, Kisiki High or FMNR means a living star. It's a Swahili translation of a living star, which is a smart way of pruning trees or tree stumps so that we can allow to be bigger trees again. But it does not necessarily mean that the tree stump or Kisiki High must come from a tree stump. Any natural vegetation which grows by itself, which grows naturally, we call it a living stump or kisiki high. So it might be a tree which is growing from a bed dropping or cow dung or whatever. But as long as it grows naturally without any human intervention, we call it kisiki high. And those are the kind of trees which we are regenerating. So, apart from coming up with a short Kenji Swahili name, kisiki high, which farmers can remember easily and can understand, we also came up with some very simple steps so that farmers can remember how to practice the technique. So we developed 4 steps, which we train farmers to follow these steps when they protect or they regenerate those living stumps. The first one is select, prune, mark, and protect. So select means that you select when the natural vegetation is growing on the ground. It usually grows in a random way. So you can select in whichever pattern you want to leave your trees, then you remove those which are not on the lines or on the pattern you prefer. After selecting those which you have remained, you prune them so that you can reduce competition from other branches, but also to allow the tree to grow fast. Then you mark the trees. We train farmers to mark the trees so that they can let their fellow community members to know that whenever you see a marked tree, then you have to know that that tree is being protected and should not be cut. Then the last one is protect. So in protecting, there are many ways of protecting. You can put fences, you can put those thorny bushes as fence, which are planted in the villages. But the best fence we usually train the farmers is the people's fence. When the community agree for themselves to protect the area, then that is the best kind of fence. So here you can see the farmer, after pruning the tree, is now marking. So for this technique alone, for farmer managed natural regeneration technique, in Dodoma region we've managed to regenerate more than 10 million trees in the past 5 years. And here are some of the pictures. You can see how the stump, the tree stump looks like, and then it has been pruned. Then they remain with few branches. We usually train the farmers to leave around 3-4 branches so that they can harvest each branch each year for different uses, for energy or for building. Then until they remain with one branch, which they allow it to grow into the tree. So we have some image here, and this is from the Google Earth. In Dodoma, we started the project in 2018, and unfortunately, in Google Earth, we don't have a photo from 2018, but we have from 2016. So in one of the villages in Chemba district, after training the farmers, because we use a training of trainer approach, they went back to the village and started training their fellow villagers, but also we usually train the champion farmers, because the champion farmers are called lead farmers, to ask the village government to give them an area for demonstration. So they were given this area. And in this area, you can see here there is a kettle dip. This building here is a kettle dip. So they were given this area to practice or to demonstrate their intervention. And in 2020, you can already see the difference. The trees have already grown up. And when they were given this area, the village government told them to split it so that this area can be used for cattle purpose, so that cattle can come here and wait or to go to the dip. And the rest of the area, they should not do any intervention. It should be used for market purpose. So they were told not to touch that area. And in 2019, this is how the picture, the trees were like. You can see the trees have been pruned and they've been marked, and this is the cattle. In 2022, last year, when we passed the trees were already big, and it was impossible to take a picture on the ground so that we can see the cattle, because when we are taking pictures, before and after pictures, we usually like to have like a red mark on the background so that we can show that it's the same area. So it was impossible to take a picture on the ground. We had to use a drone. So you can see most of the trees are already 4 or 5 meters tall. And the area which was demarcated, you can see clearly there's nothing there. So without doing this intervention, assisting the natural regeneration, sometimes it can, the area can remain like that. This is what I wanted to show. Because the whole area was like this, and because they didn't do any intervention in this area, they only did in this area, you can see the area has changed. But the area which they have not done any intervention, provided that it's natural regeneration, but because it does not get any assistance from the farm, then the area, there is high chances the area to remain like that, or to remain there. We have other examples from Google Photos, Google Earth. You can see the difference, 2018, 2021. This is another village in Mpwapwa, one of the villages called Njamasi. The coordinates are here. You can see just in 3 years, even the tank is disappearing. This is the picture which I just received yesterday from one of our field officers in Ikungi district. This is a dispensary in one of the village. And when they started, the trees were like this. And yesterday, this picture was taken yesterday. Yesterday, the trees are already this big. And this is just maybe 1 and 2 months, or 1 year and 2 months. So that is the first method which we use, which is farm-managed natural regeneration, or as what do we like to call it, sticky high. The second one we use rainwater harvesting, and in rainwater harvesting we have 2 specific techniques. The first one is Fanyaju, and the second one is half-moon bunds. And both techniques, we use them to harvest rainwater so that we can improve degraded lands, particularly farmlands and rangelands. So for the Fanyaju, we mostly do it on farmlands, while the half-moon bunds, we do it on rangelands. So this is Fanyaju. And for both techniques, the main reason of doing these techniques, the first one is to prevent soil erosion. But the second one is to harvest water so that we can increase moisture on the ground. As you can refer, that I said that most of the areas which we are working at dry lands are areas which receive minimum rainfall annually. So this is Fanyaju, where they need trenches, not to divert water from the farm to the gullies, but to retain, to harvest them so that we can retain water on the farm and ensure moisture stays on our farms for longer periods. And these are some of the pictures before and after the plots were, and after digging, when the rain started, then you can see how it works. And you can see here there are like blocks, like compartments, so that you can prevent water to flow. Otherwise, you can make a garden. Instead of harvesting, then you can make a garden. And this is the main difference, because these trenches are not new. They've been practiced for many years. The difference is that previously they used to divert water. They dig trenches so that they can divert water from the farm to the rivers or to the gardens, the other gardens. Divert water away from the farm. But now we need that water. We need every single drop of rain so that we can ensure that our farms remain with moisture for a longer period. But of course we do agroforestry. Basically, FMNR, farm-managed natural regeneration, is basically an agroforestry technique. But as I said, for Kisiki High we need FMNR and ANR. So for FMNR, farmer-managed natural regeneration, it is basically an agroforestry technique because we train farmers to grow trees on their farms. But with ANR, assisted natural regeneration, it's where we train farmers to grow trees on their communal range or rangelands or forestry reserve. So apart from FMNR, we also do a little bit of tree planting, particularly for agroforestry, and we use Regeneration as I think it's at the moment it's the only species which we plant, and we don't do it in large scale because our main intervention is natural regeneration. But because the Regeneration is also a very high drought-tolerant tree, so we also train farmers to plant this species, particularly on the trenches, on the bunds of the trenches, so that it can reinforce the trench, the bund. And apart from reinforcing it, they can also get other benefits, fertilizing the soil, of course, fodder, firewood, etc. The second rainwater harvesting technique is the half-moon bund, which we construct these half-moons, semi-circle structure, to improve pastoralists or rangelands. So this is a picture from one of the villages here in Arusha. I think this is from the Serrani Jew. We have a project there. And this is how it looks after digging, then after the rain has come. The bunds are filled with water. Then vegetation grows inside the bunds. And you can see this is already dry season, but you can see all the surroundings are dry except the vegetation inside the half-moon bunds. And we have a very successful site in Dodoma, which we started as a pilot in 2018, and now it has proven to be very successful, and that's why we scaled it up to other districts, particularly in Monduli and the other communities. This is a close-up picture. You can see the grasses. In some of the bunds, because this we do in rangelands, we usually plant some seeds there. But of course, the seeds we use are also indigenous. We don't use exotic species. This is the area in the Serrani, and this is the one in Dodoma, which we started in 2018 as a pilot. You can see the difference. The village is called Pembamoto Kongwa. This is the area which the village government set aside for grazing, but it was completely barren. It was completely bare and they didn't use it. And When we went there, they showed us the area. Then we started the technique. And because I think it was, we were the first one to do this technique here in Tanzania, so we wanted to do it as a pilot. So we did the bunds, around 5,000 bunds. Then, after a few years, it all changed. As you can see. So, for the first year, the grasses will grow inside the bunds, but after the second and third year, the grasses will start spreading even outside the bund. And now, when you go now, the whole area is full of grass. And one of the most important things is that the village government was very strong. And as I've said, the most important thing is the people's fence. The villagers agreed to protect the area because at the beginning they didn't believe if the area would change. But now the area will change completely and they don't want to go back to where the area was lying. So these are also pictures for the past 4 years. You can see 2018, 2020, 2022. Apart from the vegetation trees, which you can see here, which have just grown by themselves, the most important thing also is the gullies. You can see the gullies are also almost invisible in 2022. They are fading away. And this is a picture from satellites, planet satellite pictures. So the difference is also visible from the satellite. And as I mentioned just from the FMNR experience, for an area which you don't do intervention, it will remain like that. So here, the village government showed us a border to start the intervention from this guy. And you can see this area, which they said we should not use this area because they are building a school here. We didn't do anything. So we decided to make it as a control area because we are doing a pilot. So you can see after 4 or 5 years, the area has remained like that. And the area which we did intervention, it has already changed. As I've said, the villagers agreed that they won't graze in that area because they don't want to go back to square one. Instead, they are cutting grasses there and feed their animals at home. And we also train them how to make hay, traditional, without using machinery, weigh them, and then sell to the community members at a lower price. And they also sell to other villagers, to the nearby villagers, but at a higher price. For themselves, they sell at a lower price. And with that money, they get from selling the grasses. You can see this picture, this school. They managed to put roof in this school out of the money which they collected from selling grass. So those are kind of the benefits which they get, and then they feed their animals at home. As you can see, some of the nearby villagers, for example, last year, it was very dry in most part of Tanzania. Even villages from Morogoro, from Gairo district, they are crossing border to come to Congo district and buy grass. Yeah, so that's about our project in Pembamoto, and what I wanted to show the successes in using FMNR and rainwater harvesting. And of course, we're also using, we also implementing an AFRI 100 funded project in Dodoma, in Chiwanga district, which we also use the same intervention, particularly FMNR. So another thing which we want to share with you is scaling up. And in scaling up, we usually believe that scaling up is possible when the local communities are involved. So we are actively engaged local communities in training them these interventions so that they can train their fellow farmers. And by doing so, we ensure scaling up our interventions. And in doing so, we use different approaches. The first one I've just said, the training of trainers. This is like our main tool or our main approach. We train a few farmers, they go back to their villages, they train their fellow farmers. It has proved to be very effective. And you can see we also consider gender. We target to achieve 50-50, though sometimes it's difficult, but at the moment we've achieved 45% women, which we think is not that bad. And of course, we also include youth and other disadvantaged groups. So you can see, for example, the bunds. The bunds, all those trenches, the different trenches, you just go to the farm and just dig. You have to do some specific scientific measurements. All this, we don't go to the village and measure and let the villagers dig for themselves. We want them to know how to measure them. What we do is provide them with the tools, and very simple tools, just like spirit levels, ropes, and poles. Sometimes some of the tools they just get from their villages, for example, poles and ropes, they get there. The only thing maybe which is difficult to get in the village is the spirit level, which we usually provide them for free. So we train them how to measure. So from measuring to digging, they do it by themselves. Another tool which we use, which also has proven to be very successful, is the movie roadshow. We are doing a very active rural communication strategy, and one of the tools in rural communication we use is the Move Roadshow, which has proven to be very successful, particularly after training the farmers, the champion farmers. They go back to the villages, they start training their fellow farmers. So when they start training their fellow farmers, we go with this movie roadshow, we show cinema. And of course introduce those champion farmers. So in that documentary, short documentary, it explains all these interventions so that the whole community become aware of what the champion farmers are going to train them. And because we usually, it's usually a big event, we usually like to use an infotainment or entertainment approach, where we educate but also entertain, so that we attract large masses of people. So it's usually an event which gathers the whole community. So after this event, we are sure that the whole event knows about this High or knows about this intervention. So it's up to them to decide to accept the knowledge from the champion farmers or to decline. But of course, we know that there are always laggards, early adapters, but just from knowing that there is this specific intervention or specific project going on in our village is enough. It's already a big step for the success of the project. So these are the kind of documentaries we use. Of course, we do coaching and mentoring through our field officers. We do monitoring and evaluation. And in this, we usually prefer to be done by the communities themselves. Most of the time it's done by the champion farmers. But of course, if it's more scientific monitoring and evaluation, then we do it ourselves. Our main challenges is changing people's mindsets. This is our #1 challenge. Of course, not changing the mindset of these two beautiful ladies, but I've just used the picture, but not for these, but generally for the community and the people, because when the people are doing or are used to do this way, it's very difficult to change them to do in another way. For example, most farmers in these dry lands or semi-arid areas, they don't have a tendency of doing agroforestry. So when you are training them to do agroforestry, they'll come with many questions. What about beds or shades, whatever? So it's very difficult to change their mindset. Of course, another thing is lack of coordination and communication, particularly from us to our fellow NGOs or the government and all involved stakeholders. Invasive species is also a big problem, particularly in the northern zone. We've not experienced much in central Tanzania, Dodoma and Singida, but we've experienced this very much in Arusha, particularly in Monduli district where we're working. Lack of land use plans. As we know, in Tanzania, only 20% of the villages have land use plans. Lack of resources. Yeah, of course, way forward, active in community engagement, incentivizing communities, involving kids, particularly school children, women, increased stakeholder engagement. For example, events like this also help to reduce those challenges because we share experience, we learn from each other, we share knowledge, seize every opportunity. We always seize every opportunity from artists, musicians, politicians, so that we can and other events, for example, Uhuru Coach, and partnerships with other organizations. Yeah, asante.